breakfast, and we'll do a Murdle or maybe 3 or 4, see how many we can get done. Yeah, the oatmeal has blueberries and blackberries and things like that, so there's a little couple seeds in there. Might provide some good crunchy sounds when I'm chewing. But yeah, let me take a bite and we'll just get right into it. I'll try to be careful with hitting the glass with the silverware. I know people don't love that sound. Try to center this a little bit. Okay. If you guys aren't familiar, Murdle, I believe it started as a website, and they made the books and print versions later, but just a very easy kind of logic deduction kind of way to figure out, who was the murderer, where, what weapon did they use, and you basically use clues and things to figure it out. So this is number 41 up top here. The psychic who didn't foresee his death. The Institute has seen some promising data out of the PRL, Aretino said, using an acronym Logico didn't recognize. If they can prove the psychic is real, we're going to give them $1 million. Unfortunately, all they could provide was that their psychic was dead. Don't worry too much about that. It's just kind of like a little story that's been going on since the beginning of this. But anyway, the important stuff. The suspects. The amazing Aurelian, yeah, forgive me on the pronunciation there, currently in a prisoners in the arts program where they allow incarcerated magicians to evaluate self-proclaimed psychics. 5'6", left-handed, green eyes, blonde hair, Aries. Dr. Crimson. She's the smartest doctor she's ever met, according to her, and she's probably right. Yeah, she flies single-engine planes, but if she crashes, she'll set her own bones. 5'9", left-handed, green eyes, red hair, Aquarius. The Duchess of Vermilion. A tall, old woman with tall, old secrets. Like how much money she's given the PRL. 5'9", left-handed, gray eyes, white hair, Pisces. Okay. Let's put this a little bit more to the side here. Locations, the grounds, filled with holes as a result of dowsing experiments. The roof, outdoors, where they've done successful experiments with astral projection and failed ones with actual levitation. The isolation chamber indoors, a water tank in a dark room. In it, you can regress in time or just be really bored. Okay, now we have the weapons up here. A quasi-perpetual motion machine. It doesn't run forever. This one's record is 2 hours. A dowsing rod. You can find water, oil, and suckers with this. A crystal ball. If you look into it, it will tell you your future, so long as your future is a crystal ball. Some of these are kind of funny. Okay, so we have our clues and evidence. A quasi-perpetual motion machine was discovered inside a freshly dug hole. Also, I should say, I have my dog and my cat here again as always, so if you hear any sounds in the background, it could be one of them. My cat likes to make an appearance, so she might be up here at some point. Okay, back to it. So a quasi-perpetual motion machine was discovered inside a freshly dug hole. So we know the grounds over here says it's filled with holes. So discovered inside freshly dug holes. So now we realize a quasi-perpetual motion machine, this weapon, was on the grounds because that's where there's holes. So we start to deduce who the killer is here. So first we look for, this is the weapon. So the quasi-perpetual motion machine is here. We know grass, right? Grass. So we know the perpetual motion machine was here. So because we know only one weapon can be in one location, we know these two weapons, the dowsing rod and the crystal ball, they cannot also be in the grounds because we know the quasi-perpetual motion machine was there, so we can put X's. And we also know because the quasi-perpetual motion machine was in the grounds, we can only have that one weapon in one location, right? So it cannot be in the roof or the isolation chamber. So we put X's there, so circles indicate where the proper weapon was. Okay, so the next clue says this suspect with a dowsing rod was born on February 1st. See Exhibit B. So at the beginning of this section, they gave us a little chart for birth dates and what their star sign is, Aries, Aquarius, Pisces. So basically we have to go just flip back and figure out, is it Pisces, Aquarius, or Aries that was born in February 1st? So let's go back and flip to so February 1st would be January 20 to February 18th. So that would be an Aquarius. So we know February 1st falls in between there, so Aquarius. So we know the person who was the Aquarius had the dowsing rod because the suspect with the dowsing rod was born on February 1st. So Dr. Crimson here is the Aquarius. So we know Dr. Crimson had the dowsing rod. So what we do is we find Dr. Crimson's indication, or his symbol, I should say, and the dowsing rod. So Dr. Crimson had the dowsing rod, which is this symbol. So we put a circle there. And because Dr. Crimson had the dowsing rod, Dr. Crimson could not have had the quasi-perpetual motion machine or the crystal ball. And because Dr. Crimson had the dowsing rod, the other two suspects could not have had the dowsing rod, so we mark those off. So now here's what we know for sure. We've got Dr. Crimson's weapon. We have where the quasi-perpetual motion machine was. So now we take the statements from the three suspects. Now, the way this works is the murderer is lying. The others are telling the truth. So two people here are telling us the truth, so their statement is true. The person who is lying is the murderer. So basically what you have to do is just kind of go one by one here and try to eliminate or basically find who the liar is. So I try to just start with the first person. So I assume the first two are telling the truth, and then I assume this person's a liar. And then we see if the logic actually checks out. If it's not true, I start over, and then I assume these two people are telling the truth, and this one's the liar. And then I just kind of keep going down the list to figure out who the liar is. So we'll start by assuming these first two, the Amazing Aurelian and Dr. Crimson, are telling the truth. So if the Amazing Aurelian is telling the truth, Magician's Code, I did not bring a crystal ball, so we're going to assume that's true. So we find the Amazing Aurelian. He says he did not bring the crystal ball, so we're going to put an X there. Now, because we put an X there, if you see, there's only one other possible location the crystal ball could have been, right? Because we already knew from a previous, from our clues and evidence, we X'd out the other possibilities. So that means the crystal ball had to have been with, let me real quick, I'm sorry. I'm just going to do this. Whenever I'm testing the liars, I do these with smaller X's and circles so I remember which ones we're testing. So I do these much smaller. So I put the smaller X because we know the bigger ones are 100% for sure from the clues and evidence. So we know the crystal ball then would have been right here. And if the crystal ball was here, we know that means the Duchess of Vermilion had the crystal ball. So the Duchess of Vermilion could not have had the quasi-perpetual machine. So we put an X there, which now leaves the last spot. So the Amazing Aurelian had to have had the quasi-perpetual motion machine. I'll take a bite real quick before we go to the next person. Crimson says, trust me, the amazing Orlin was standing on the roof. So if that's the case, we find the amazing Orlin right here. They were standing on the roof, so the roof is indicated with this symbol. So we put a circle there. So if the amazing Orlin was on the roof, they obviously couldn't have been in the grounds or in the isolation chamber. And that also means the two other suspects could not have been on the roof. So now we've narrowed it down a little bit more. So now, we did the Duchess of Vermilion, who we assumed at the beginning was the liar. So that would mean the opposite of what she is saying is factual. So, because she's lying, right? Like that's, we're assuming she's the liar. So she says, I was relaxing in the isolation chamber. Excuse me. Which means if we assume she's lying, she was not in the isolation chamber, right? Because we assume she's lying. So we find the isolation chamber. What we do, Duchess Vermilion, we go down isolation chamber. So then we will put an X right here because she says she was there, but we're assuming she's a liar. So if that's the case, that must have meant that she was in the grounds. And if she was in the grounds, obviously, we know only one person can be in the grounds. So Dr. Crimson was not in the grounds, which means Dr. Crimson would have been in the isolation chamber because that was the only place left. So we now have enough to kind of fill out the rest here so we can look and see, okay, the amazing Orlin had the quasi-machine and was on the roof. But according to what we learned earlier, the quasi-dowsing machine was outdoors. So if this was the correct assumption of truth and lies, this should have been here because it doesn't add up. The amazing Orlin couldn't have had the quasi-machine on the roof because we knew the quasi-machine was on the grounds. So something here isn't checking out. So it makes me think that the Duchess of Vermilion then is actually telling the truth. And when I learned that, I usually just put a little T there because we know she's telling the truth. So next, what I'm going to do is erase all those little smaller X's and circles that we did earlier so that we can redo this while assuming now maybe Dr. Crimson is the liar. So let me erase the ones from earlier. Erase all these. I'm using an erasable pen. I should probably get a pencil, but I actually don't have one in my house here. Take a sip of water. Okay, so now we're going to assume the Duchess of Vermilion is telling the truth, and so is the amazing Orlin. So we're going to say Dr. Crimson's a liar. So if we think Duchess of Vermilion is telling the truth, then she was actually relaxing in the isolation chamber. So we're going to put a circle there. So if she was in the isolation chamber, the other two suspects could not have been. And if she was in the isolation chamber, obviously she could not have been in the other possible locations. Let me take another bite. So now we go back and say the amazing Orlin was telling the truth. So they indicated they did not bring a crystal ball. Amazing Orlin, no crystal ball. Which then would mean they brought the quasi-dowsing machine. Which means if they brought the quasi-dowsing machine, nobody else could have. So we put more X's there. So that means the amazing Orlin was standing on the roof. So then that would mean the opposite, because they're lying. So the amazing Orlin was not standing on the roof. So we find the amazing Orlin and then the roof location. And now we put an X there. So if they weren't on the roof, and we knew from the assumption from the Duchess of Vermilion and some other clues that he couldn't have been, the Orlin couldn't have been in the isolation chamber, so they must have been on the grounds. And if they were in the grounds, then nobody else could have been there, so we put more X's. And now we learn that Dr. Crimson was on the roof. So now we go back and do that exercise to see if everything matches up again. And by looking at this, I think it does. So the amazing Orlin had the quasi-dowsing machine, and we know the amazing Orlin was on the grounds. And we learned from earlier that the quasi-perpetual motion machine was on the grounds. So that's accurate. So it already looks like this is going to check out. So we know Dr. Crimson then, or we assume Dr. Crimson has the dowsing rod, and the dowsing rod was on the roof. So if we put the dowsing rod on the roof, because we know that's where, the clues are telling us, we put the dowsing rod on the roof, which means it couldn't have been in the isolation chamber, which then means the crystal ball must have been in the isolation chamber. So now everything checks out. Dr. Crimson had the dowsing rod on the roof. The Duchess of Vermilion had a crystal ball in the isolation chamber. The crystal ball was in the isolation chamber. So that seems to be our answer. We've discovered Dr. Crimson is a liar because now everything checks out. If Dr. Crimson wasn't a liar, this wouldn't, the boxes and the circles wouldn't match up. The weapons, suspects, and locations would all be a little mixed up. So my assumption here is that Dr. Crimson is the murderer. Dr. Crimson had the dowsing rod, and Dr. Crimson was in the roof or on the roof. So what we could do now is in the back of the book, you're able to reference to make sure you've got the answer right. Let's flip to the back here. Now, there's one other thing I'll point out. There's an extra clue section. So, let's say you're struggling to figure out who's telling the truth or who's lying. You're going to get an extra hint here. So, we didn't use this, but this says the inspector used his mental powers to perceive a new fact. In this case, the amazing Orlin had a quasi-perpetual motion machine. He had less success bending spoons. I did not bring a crystal ball. So, we know this is true. Right? This is just a given extra hint for us. I try not to use these, but it's totally okay to do that. So, this checks out with what we found though, right? The amazing Orlin did have the quasi-perpetual motion machine, so I'm going to keep going to the answer section. Number 41. It was Dr. Crimson with the dowsing rod on the roof, which is exactly what we said here. Dr. Crimson shouted, "Sure, I killed the psychic only because I found out they weren't. They tried to make a fool out of me, so I made them pay." Needless to say, the psychic research laboratory did not get the million. Anyway, that's just a part of the storyline. But yeah, that's just another one of these Wordles. I think these are they're fun. They get a little repetitive, so it starts very simple. So the first, I think 25 or so are very straightforward and easy, but it steps up in difficulty. But once you get a hang of it, so these were the harder ones that started, I think, in number 25. So I think once you started with these, each section gets a little more difficult. So 25 for now, I'm still working my way through this level. I'll show you the different levels when you start. It's got the different, so the first ones are elementary, then you've got occult medium, hard-boiled, and then impossible. So right now we're on the occult medium. Elementary ones are very simple. It's like an introduction. Occult medium, right, gets a little bit more. You've seen they're all pretty similar, where we're basically just trying to deduce who the liar is. Hard-boiled, we looked at. It seems like it just adds like an extra element of boxes, because now they introduce motives, apparently. So it looks like it gets a little more difficult. And then as you get further into the impossible, let's see where the impossible ones start. Oh, I see with the impossible ones, they introduce the statements with the lying too. So these, you get all the, so the third degree of difficulty, you just get a bunch of clues and evidence. But then, when you get to the very difficult ones, you have to start telling figuring out who the truth and the liar is. So, yeah, it just adds a couple extra steps. I'm excited to get a little further in, but I think for now, we'll keep working these. I think I'll make this a series, because I got quite a few views on this video previously when I did the Wordle. So I think it'll be fun to keep this going. I might do some of these with hard candy sounds.